This was designed in widescreen, but we're here in a 4:3, so if the graphics look a little clunky in places, I do apologize. And it's a very traditional bit of PowerPoint because I wanted to leave you some information that you can digest later without having to say, crikey, what did the man say at all? So there are notes in here that will aid you in your digest later. Also, if I would encourage you from your working groups, when you meet later, it's not what your country can do for you, What the hell can you do? That's what we'd also like to hear through the dialogue process is what is the citizen's role? What can you do? So questions like how can a citizen best influence the dialogue process? What are your concerns, of course? Ethical citizenship, What is ethical citizenship? And this leans a bit on President Higgins' ethical citizenship initiative as well, on what your role is and how do we start transformational change. So these are all sorts of interesting questions that we'd like you to play with later on. So as Charles said, yes, I'm with the Environmental Protection Agency, and we've arranged, just very quickly in one slide, we've arranged of what we call climate services related activities in the EPA. We do, as you'll probably know, the greenhouse gas inventories and projections. So we measure how we're doing, and we project into the future to show, how much doo-doo we're in and what's, the risks to the future. Of course, we have a large research program as well that runs out of my area. And in the last 5 years, I'm delighted to say, we've a growing environment and health related co-funded program with the HSE, which has been really very successful, and we're delighted to see that growing year on year. And I got loads of great ideas this morning, so I'm hoping for next year's call now we'll include some more. Environmental assessment, we had some questions here. How can people influence this morning? Strategic environmental assessment is a marvellous tool that is now legally required, and this is how the integration question that we met this morning in the last session, how do we ensure the plans are integrated? Well, the SEA process is the way that's achieved. So all the plan makers have to send their plans out to ourselves, to the HSE and others, and this is where they make sure that cross-sectoral concerns are brought to bear on each individual plan, whether it's energy, forestry, national cycleways plan, offshore energy, food, all the plans that are required by the state. So they're all subject to SEA, and there's a very good web page, and that's also a public process as well, so you can involve yourself as a member of the public. Climate Secretariat. So this is a knowledge and management resource we supply into John Fitzgerald's chaired National Climate Change Advisory Committee. Again, that falls under my group, and the Intergovernmental Climate Science. So we support the state at the UNFCCC meetings, at the Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change meetings, and other EU climate science meetings. The resource efficiency and behavioural change, we've had worked on that over a few years, and that's still ongoing and a very active area. And the climate dialogue, the new area, which I'm going to talk about here. And I will preface that and say that I'm not speaking for the dialogue here today, okay? These are only views to give you a sense, because it's just beginning. And they're just beginning to crystallize what it is they want to try achieve with their advisory committee. So I'm not telling stories out of shop if you're worried, so, or if they're worried, but just to kind of excite you about the prospect of what the dialogue will bring, in my view, and the EPA's view, and how you can best influence it. And I'd be really looking forward to the feedback from today, because I'll take that back into the dialogue process then. I have a conduit back in. So it's very interesting to see this as a kind of a test bed for how we might proceed. Climate dialogue is difficult. It's since back in the 1990s, the IPCC have been trying to tell us, we ought to be worried about things. And a lot of people weren't listening, and it's taken a long time. So talking about climate change is hard, as these guys know, the Intergovernmental Panel, But what we do know is the sooner we act, the less damage will be done to our society, to our economy, in fact to our very culture here in Ireland as well. But dialogue is not without its challenges. So 2 slides, horrible slides to ape Nick's, just to show you that Ireland, from a greenhouse gas emissions point of view, we're the 3rd highest per capita in Europe, and Ireland has had an odd trying to breed our way down the table in the last few years. We've won the highest population growth rates in Europe, so that is not really a sustainable solution to solving our greenhouse gas, that we move down the more people we're here. But still, even with our very high birth rate in Ireland, we're still right up there, up on top. And looking forward then, our current projections, our current emissions are here. This is the boom years, and we're back down to something more rational. These are our projections in green, and that's where we've got to be by 2050. Okay? So this is, a clear and present danger, I think, as the movie goes. You know, it's certainly not without its challenges. And the longer we leave it, the longer it's going to take and the harder, the more pain, in fact, it's going to be for us to decarbonize. But this is all, you know, it's not about limits. Actually, we have to do this because it's good for our health, clearly, as we heard this morning. It makes us an efficient society. And we're eventually going to run out of carbon-based fuels in any case. So, you know, aside from all of these things, but limits, as we heard this morning, limits and targets are good for the political cycle. So they've been quite effective. And it's a useful tool, particularly for the political cycle. But I wouldn't like you to go away that we have to do this because we meet a target. No, we don't. We've got to do this because, you know, it's in our own best interest. As Professor Cormacan said, you know, we're not trying to save the planet. You know, the planet will do fine without us. You know, actually, what we're trying to do is save ourselves. You know, and I've used his line regularly because it's humorous, but actually quite powerful as well too. So, the EPA published in at the end of 2016 our quadrennial, every 4 years, this major State of the Environment report on how we are doing. And we have 7 key messages, 3 systemic, and you'll be delighted to see that health and well-being is one of the cross-cutting systemic messages. I know, be very pleased with that. So, we brought in, but the other one is a topic message, is community engagement. What we have recognized is that a more sustainable environmental future has to involve far more engagement with citizens and communities. You know, none of the top-down is good so far, but it's really not going to achieve any enduring state of sustainability. And really what I'm building up to is setting up why we are at the dialogue. So the Paris Agreement on climate change, in Article 12, it very clearly also stated that we need to have an enhanced climate change education, training, public awareness and public participation. So that's a clear mandate in the actual climate accord, that member states have got to engage their populations and their citizens in discussing climate change and the implications. And then the programme for government, the heading is gone. That's one of the things being squashed from a widescreen to 4:3. But in the programme for government that's currently in place, there was an agreement that a national dialogue would be established, and then the National Mitigation Plan, which John talked about this morning, its action number 8 required the implementation of a national dialogue on climate action to be led by the Department of Communications, Climate Action and Environment. And we, the EPA, are a key stakeholder. We will be providing a form of secretariat, a form of technical and operational support to that dialogue. And it will involve lots of other government departments and agencies as well. John saw this. put this up, and I still think it's an excellent slide. So from our own government programme for government, our own national mitigation plan, the EPA's report, and the UN Climate Accord in Paris, it's all converging on the fact that we need to talk about climate change, and that's an excellent piece of graffiti. And this one hasn't been overprinted by the stuff that John had. And if you look at it, someone here was went to a lot. When you look at this in detail with these slides later, they've blocked off. You can see the block off lines here, and they've chalked it out. So this was no quick, random piece of graffiti. Someone thought long and hard and planned this and executed it excellently. So, a national dialogue on climate action. And what the government have said is that the dialogue on climate action is intended to engage people on the challenge of climate change, fair enough, to motivate changes in behaviours. And that's where I started off. You know, it's not about what your country can do for you. Just, you know, there's more to this. And create structures at local, regional and national levels to support the generation of ideas. And this is one test bed here, I'm hoping. To transition to appropriate actions. And don't underestimate this one. What it's saying here is that the community engagement has the ambition of building public support for the action plans we need to put in place. Now that's a challenge. That's it, like public support for wind farms. Public support for allowing land to flood. Public support for abandoning properties that are unsalvageable, either from coastal erosion. You know, we're not going to spend a fortune of taxpayers' money saving holiday homes down in Kerry when we can be putting that into healthcare. That's my view, but that's where I think that's going. These are difficult decisions we're going to have to make as a society, you know. So the public good and the public support, and that's a challenge, because what we do know is from the last 20, I spent a lot of time in regulation before I moved in the last 15 years to this area, and a lot of industrial regulation dealing with hazardous waste incinerators and dealing with silver mines, animal health issues and all sorts of things like that. And I do know the public get very exercised on things, and we haven't been good at engaging on challenging aspects. So a lot of that is the upward feedback and changing, but this is the difficult conversation in many cases, is accepting that we're going to have to adopt things in our community that will be in the interest of the public good. So, core ambitions for the National Dialogue on Climate Action, just called the Climate Dialogue, okay, we're going to abbreviate that, is create awareness, fine. Create structures and information flows. So part of it, and what we'll have to be doing is providing knowledge, access to knowledge for communities in accessible forms. And establish these long-term appropriate networks for people to meet periodically to consider new evidence, whether at a local or national level, and how they might best input into economic and social and behavioural aspects of their state's plans and policies. And provide regular input into the prioritization of implement, because the state will have to make decisions about what's important, what's urgent. And we're hoping the public will help us in that discussion as well. So the dialogue has an advisory group. Now they're set up for 2 years to more or less input into the state's dialogue plans, and it's chaired by Pat Gilroy, who's in renewable energy systems. He's also some connection to GAA, but I'm a rugby boy. I wouldn't know much about it now. But so Pat, but a very nice man, and the group is kind of interesting, invited by the minister, and a lot of the dialogue is Minister Naughton. He's championing this, and he's really pushing hard. It's very important to him, which is really very positive. There's social justice sectors, the NGOs, we have UNESCO there, we have industry organisations, IBEC and the IFA, we have media people, we have people from education, local authorities, trade unions. They're all represented in this group. So it's quite an interesting, quite a diverse group. So they're just established. I came from the second meeting yesterday, came down here last night. So we met from about 4 o'clock till about nearly 7 o'clock, half 6, 7 o'clock last night. And very interesting, but we're at that norming phase of meetings, you know, just trying to work out how we will work. And one of the early initiatives that we know that Minister Naughton and the department are very keen on doing is have 3 major regional meetings. And that's maybe one of the questions to put to you as well here today. So the regional meetings, they're looking at one on the south, one on the east coast, and one on the west, more than likely Galway. I think Mayo was also mentioned, but I think it'll be Galway. And they're hoping to run them all between now and I think January or February next year. So they'll be quite big. And that it's, you know, who should be invited? How do we do that? We don't want all the extremes in the room. You know, we want normal, everyday people. And I'm not saying if you're extreme, you're not normal. Sorry.
Is this a normal situation?
Yeah. I can't scroll back and edit that out, can I? No, because I'm mic'd up here, so I'm sorry. Pardon? Yes, the IFA are represented in one of the industrial organs. Farmers are our industry, so they're in there with, and Tom Ryan is on it, very nice chap on the group, and very proactive and very positive. So the 3 meetings, but you know, how do we handle the invitations? Is it just open, you know, hear ye, public meeting, or do we do invites and whatever? So that's an interesting challenge I would like to put to you as part of your groups. Who do we invite? What mechanisms do we use to invite? You know, through the NGO networks, through the public participation networks, through the local authority networks. You know, there's loads of other networks out there, through the likes of IFA and other groups, you know, the members of Untashka as well. So we have lots of ways to do this, but that's the plan. So just to, and John, very quick, I'll mention this very quickly because John talked about it. So yeah, we're going to try and get away from the normal stuff. You know, we're not going to be talking at people. It's going to be quite engaging. But the EPA climate lectures, the schools programs, citizens assembly, tidy towns, young scientists. So we're wrapping all of these. What we're trying to do is connect and collect all the national initiatives where we can have conversations about climate change. And they'll all be brought into the umbrella of the dialogue, and where we can, we will support these organizations to take on climate change as an aspect of their work and an aspect of their dialogue. And we've sponsored the Cool Planet group and Cara Ostenberg to do what we call climate ambassadors work. So we are educating people to be social missionaries and who are going to go out and convert and talk about climate change and climate science to people. So there's a lot of really exciting things to. We have EcoEye, of course, that ongoing that we work with. And there's also talk, the Minister and the Department are very keen on having a National Climate Day. And this is from the Philippines. They have a National Climate Day, you know, so I would imagine it's not too difficult for us to organize one. But that's going to be a plan, and we may see that in 2018. So, democracy, community, and environment. So this is, I've gone beyond the dialogue here, and what I really wanted to do then is have a few comments that might inspire perhaps on what is from what's in the EPA's point of view and our perspective on things. But our fundamental view is really that everyone can be a leader for the common good. Okay, everyone can be a leader. But citizens need to take personal responsibility for the transitions required. You know, it's not just, it's what we call ground up as well as top down. But it is challenging, and we don't underestimate that, because we've all different interests, different motivations. Some of us are committed early adopters, others are can be persuaded, you know, oh yeah, that's a good idea. Others are laggards, and we might have to use tax-based incentives or other sanctions to get them over the line, you know. But we're all quite different, and mocking. Oh, that's exciting, but it is also a challenge on behavioural change. And some of us think mainly about ourselves, unfortunately. You know, we are extraordinarily selfish, actually. And we're usually trying to maximize, as an economist would call it, we're trying to maximize our own personal welfare, you know, our own personal outcome on most of these things. And that's, you know, we have to re-engineer that to people to think about the public good. And that's a challenge. So the dialogue process will need ethical, brave, well-informed, and enduring leadership in our homes, our businesses, and in our communities, and most especially in our governance structures. And an important element to the success of the dialogue is mapping, as I talked about, the national and local initiatives and trying to support them into the future. But, you know, change is possible, and you'll know yourself. They never thought we would, you know, break our love affair with plastic bags, our love affair with fags in the pub, or fags in the restaurant, you know, but we know when we're faced with compelling challenges that are challenges with compelling evidence that we will do the right thing. So, responsible citizenship, you know, why should you care? And, you know, this is kind of like the whole world is in your hands, you know, it's a bit corny. But anyway, I like it, it's okay. But our State of the Environment 2016 report, we observed, and this was quite a powerful observation, picked up by a few of the media really, and where we say our national value systems has evolved to a stage that sees conspicuous consumption as socially desirable. We like our flash cars, you know. We like our shopping trips to New York for a weekend, you know. We like our very big houses, you know, we like our multiple holidays. So this conspicuous consumption is seen as socially desirable, and that's, you know, we're going to have to, and you know, I don't want to come across as a mad communist, you know, but there's just simply not enough stuff to go around, and we're lucky that we can afford it, and that 1/3 of the world are starving, and we can outbid them because we have more money, you know. So, you know, it's not that it's great that I can afford it. You've got to be thinking about who's not getting it because I'm buying it, you know, and I'm being wasteful with it. So, and the rise of individualism is dictating behaviors that are not always in the best interest of the state or indeed the environment. So, we need to promote an active and responsible citizenship that strives to support this common good. And that in turn will lead to a much more vibrant, much more sustainable, and much healthier environment and economy for all of us. But it is tricky, we don't underestimate that, because we have to start messing with very difficult and mucky things like value systems, you know, and behaviours. But two of the key points that I think anyway from an EPA point of view will be important in the dialogue process and engaging with the public is that it really is all connected. You know, our national infrastructure is connected, and its condition, it's resilient, is connected to climate change. Our behaviours, our consumption behaviours are connected to directly with climate change, our ecosystems, our people, green jobs and our economy, you know, and people really, as a lot of you are medical people here, this is my medical joke, but the people here are generally I see them as the synapses in this, you know, it's people really make this work, you know. So that's it, that's the first key message. The second key message, and this came across very strongly this morning, and I re-emphasize it, are the co-benefits. And this is a key selling point, and it's one of the ones the agency has also been invited to address the Citizens' Assembly. And this is one of the points we're going to try and make strongly. You know, this is not just about climate change. This is about better health outcomes, better air quality, a more resilient national infrastructure and power, you know, a more competitive economy, looking at renewable fuels, reducing the cost of production of our goods and services. More energy efficient and warmer homes, preserved wetlands and habitats. And we heard this morning about our peatlands. You know, why are we still harvesting our peatlands? And you and I give tax dollars every year. We support the peat generation industry by 470,000 euros per year per megawatt electricity capacity in the peat. So 470,000 euros per megawatt capacity. And you know, you multiply up, I think there's about 250 megawatt in the peat power side. And whereas wind energy is only supported by 110,000 euros per megawatt capacity, you know. And I don't know, that's a no-brainer to me, really, you know, it really is, it's a no. But the nonsense is you harvest peat, it's a very natural carbon sink. So we destroy a carbon sink, and then we take it and we burn it and we create more carbon. So you're losing nearly 2 or 3 times on that equation. It doesn't make sense. So that's something we have to do. And cleaner, safer cities, and ultimately living within our planetary means. Do you know what that's about? Yeah, but do you know why? There are political scientists, there's only a political scientist, would we? And they think the Game of Thrones is one grand allegory for climate change. They do. Where the Night Watch are the EPA, you know, are the IPCC, you know, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, you know, and the banner houses in Ireland are the departments. Or on a global scale, the banner houses could be nation states, you know, some strong, some happy, some doing it, you know, and it is quite powerful, but it's interesting. And, you know, Cersei Lannister, I suppose she could be Trump, you know, you know, and the dragons, you know, power, wealth, influence, you know, so it's fantastic. You could have a ball with that, you know, but I think it's useful just because it's actually a very interesting communication tool to get people thinking about it, you know, and convert it into something that we derive a lot of pleasure from. Anyway, that's the end of the presentation. I hope now your own private workshop sessions here will be spurred on by that, and you might help in our process. I am around anyway if you want to ask any questions. You guys would probably have to encourage you to join a table now as well too, anyway. Any questions at all before you get stuck in?
5 points, is that right? You want 5? Just to clarify what you want the group.
Charles, what to...
So has anybody got any quick questions for Jonathan? And then we'll explain to you what we want from each table. So any just quick questions, like maybe 3 questions max, yeah? Okay, this man here.
Okay, you mentioned...
Yourself.
Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned peat as a valuable carbon sink. Now, is there any national strategy of peat restoration? I know Board Number 1 has been active in that in a private capacity, but in west of Ireland we have huge resources of peat. Is there any national strategy?
There is, yeah. The National Peatland Strategy is in process. I don't know where it is at because my colleague Taig O'Mahony deals directly with that, but we are pushing through that. But I mentioned the National Mitigation Plan earlier on, and one of the actions in the Mitigation Plan is to look closely at the proposed time frame for the end of peat extraction and see can we bring it forward. I think that's essentially what's in there. But the National Peatland Strategy is important, and you know, it took about 5,000 to 15,000 years to grow some of that peat. It's not going to regrow again, but even if we reflood it, and the other thing about the peatlands is they're fabulous floodwater attenuation. So there's a whole lot of services provided by it. Yeah.
I just think in the interest of time, because we have until 3:30, if anybody's got specific questions for Jonathan, they can talk to Jonathan directly. I think that's much, I think it's faster in terms of our time thing. So basically the question was, how are we going to do this? Derham is going to give it, I could if you want. So basically we want from every table, we want what you think, what your table considers as the top 3 priorities for climate change and health in Ireland, okay? Yeah, and so it's, in a sense it's an exercise whether a table can kind of reach a consensus, all right? So you're going to have to go pretty quickly to do this. So how we propose you to do this is that each table has got one of these white charts, okay? And also the post-it pads. So what we'd like you to do is to quickly, introduce yourself to the person next door to you, and then each table has to identify who's going to be the person that stands up from their table and tells us what the 3 priorities that they consider from their table is and why, okay, at the end. So we want to collect up that information. We'll write up that information as an output of this report and we'll send it to Jonathan. Okay, so that's what we're trying to do. But our time scale on this is quite tight.
Steve is just going to help us with this as well. So basically we want you to write one thing on one of these at a time, and we'll put them on the white sheet and combine them afterwards. But the priority things on one sheet, the suggestions for the dialogue on another. And the priorities can be global, national, local as well. And if we have time, we'll see if we have to vote on this. We'll give you 2 minutes talking to the person beside you.
Jonathan,